We are joined now by our friend, Fusion-in-Chief, and business correspondent, Mr. Ryan Nurse. Welcome. What's the scoop with weed, man? What's going on in the world today?
Well, here's the deal. There's so many of these medical marijuana states that are producing so much quality product, which now is seeping into the non-legal states, right? And you would think that the price of marijuana has collapsed, right, in the past 5 years from $100 per kilogram down to $25 per kilogram.
Wow.
Right? It's a lot. This seems like it would be a good thing, at least for consumers like myself. But there has been some unintended consequences. What are some of those unintended consequences? We have a live guest joining us from Tucson, Arizona. Her name is Sylvia Longmire. She's a drug war expert and the author of the book Border Insecurity, which comes out later this month. Good to have you here, Sylvia.
Thanks for having me.
So there's this Washington Post article, and it's making the argument that the drop in marijuana prices has caused Central American drug producers and the Mexican drug cartels to replace their weed fields with poppy fields in order to produce more black tar heroin. And black tar heroin is becoming a growing problem in the United States. What are your thoughts on this, Sylvia?
This is something that all of us drug war observers have kind of been keeping an eye on, the same way that the cartels keep an eye on our drug market. They try to make forecasts and speculate on what the drug demand is going to be so they can adjust. For example, cocaine. Cocaine is a fashion or trend-dependent drug, and the demand for cocaine just roller coasters every single year. So if they're not making as much money on cocaine, they'll make more money on meth or on heroin, and I think that's what's happening with marijuana. If the price goes down and they start to lose market share on marijuana, they'll start looking at other illegal drugs to try to make bigger profits on those.
I see. And then, so if the United States fully legalized marijuana, how do you think the cartels and drug producers would react? Would they get out of the marijuana game altogether? And if they shifted their resources totally towards things like opium and meth, could that become an even worse problem since those drugs are associated with more violence?
Sure, the potential is always there. And take a look at Prohibition back in the 1930s. You had Al Capone and organized crime groups like that in places like Chicago and New York. When alcohol was legalized, again, they got into the legal alcohol business. And they were still making money, though, off of prostitution and other different kinds of rackets. And I think we'll see the same thing with the cartels. It'll be a big financial hit if marijuana is fully legalized, but they could get into it on the legal side. And certainly it'll still be illegal in other parts of the world where marijuana is in demand. But sure, they'll shift their resources to other illegal drugs. They'll also take a look at kidnapping, extortion of businesses in Mexico. There are a lot of ways that they can still make money even if marijuana is fully legalized in the U.S.
So they're diversifying. Wow, they're just like any other business. So now, my understanding is that this black tar heroin that's coming from Mexico and Central America has been associated with a demographic shift in terms of the heroin users in the U.S. Is this true, and can you explain this a little further for us?
Sure. Most of the time when we think of heroin users or heroin junkies, you think of somebody in like a gang-addled neighborhood, African-American youths, people with needles sticking out of their arms, etc. And it's not like that anymore. Now this new black tar heroin, it's purer, it's cheaper, and it can be smoked and it can be inhaled. It doesn't have to be injected. And now we're starting to see a shift of this black tar heroin being used by teenagers, youngsters, Caucasian, middle class, upper middle class, and it's a completely different demographic. Middle class, upper middle class neighborhoods, and it's not exactly what you'd expect. And I think that's part of the reason that we're starting to see a spike in some parts of the country in just a higher usage, because it's considered more socially acceptable by different social groups now.
Oh, that's very interesting. Thank you so much. A little concerning, too, but thanks a lot for joining us, Sylvia.